A sound soul dwells within a sound mind and a sound body.
I bet you were expecting some well-thought-out thesis here about the serious theme this show provides, but instead you've got Timu Purple Guy on your screen. Don't worry, I still talk about the series and even touch on these themes. I honestly just thought of the line Timu Purple Guy and had to throw it in the script somewhere. It's been a minute since I've watched a show where I could put the in 2025 label. In fact, it's in 2026 now. But I still want to do this series because one of my favorite things to do is watch some of these older shows to see, well, honestly, how dumb I was as a child, or to try and explain how I ended up being someone who made his entire internet personality being a slasher villain. Hey, hi, hello, my name's Levin, and welcome to the new old series in 2026, where I mostly go back and watch some of my favorite shows from being a kid, or some beloved shows from around the time, and I look at them as an adult and not the intended audience. Or reminisce on how I wasn't the intended audience back then, for the express purpose to show how my experience has changed how I look at these. You know, being somewhat an adult who talks about these things fairly often and having worked on film projects and such. And today's target? Soul Eater, probably the most Y2K anime to ever Y2K. Airing in 2008 and based on the manga that ran from 2004 to 2013, Jesus, I feel old. The story takes place in a world where there are people known as weapons who have the magic ability to turn into, well, weapons. This isn't exactly expanded upon in the show, but for those of you who really want to know, it's basically the result of a D&D wish spell. And then there are those who wield the weapons, Meisters. The entire power system is based on souls, and I know this is already sounding like a lot, but that's what you sign up for in anime. Crazy power systems. The main plot, though, follows 3 weapon Meister teams, collectively called the Seven. No, we're not talking about the boys. As they continue this timeless war between the Grim Reaper, witches, and the Kishin. Soul Eater is kind of looked at pretty fondly as one of those great animes, not in the same sense as shows like Evangelion, Foley Coley, or Your Lie in April, where it's so impactful in an emotional sense, but more in the sense of this show is a lot of people's childhood and is held in warm regards by the wider anime community. This was one of the first animes I discovered, not just having it on because my older brothers. So, no matter how much I dislike the prequel, I am still one of the people that love Soul Eater. The first manga I ever read was Soul Eater, and while I've definitely watched shows that I love more, it's definitely still got the nostalgic factor for me. And I want to touch on that a little later, but for now, just know, I'm very biased. I love the show, and I'm gonna sit and talk it because that's what I do, but don't take things I say way too seriously. But first, do you know that I'm the only channel on YouTube that you can watch at the DWMA? True story, don't look it up. Don't you want to be a part of that prestigious channel's story? You could be by subscribing. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers before December, and any help to hit that goal will make you a really cool person. And you will be among the first to see all my videos, so go hit that red button. Was that an okay section? You did it anyway, so it's not that bad, I guess. The first 3 episodes of the show are dedicated to introducing us to the Seven, and right from the first shot of the series, you can immediately tell why it got immensely popular. The atmosphere, straight into the gorgeous animation from Studio Bones, to the sheer fact that this girl was fighting with a scythe to begin with. It's very clear the vibes of this show are set. Maka and Soul, these two, are introduced having a canon kill count of 99, and spend their episode hunting down a witch named Blair, so that Soul can eat her soul and become a death scythe. Blair is one of my biggest issues with the show, I'll get there. They also get told that if he doesn't swallow a witch's soul, all their previous 99 won't count and the two will have to start all over again from scratch. Which, seeing as it was mentioned, you know something goes wrong, so what goes wrong here? Blair's a cat. Anyways, Blackstar and Tsubaki are introduced in episode 2, also hunting down a witch. You see, they have a canonical kill count of 0. They suck at this, and yet they intend on getting all their souls in one fell swoop. The witch they're tracking down has a bodyguard named Mifune, the swordsman, who killed a bunch of mafia guys, conveniently making it so that all 99 Kishin Egg souls, which are what they call the evil souls, and the one witch soul will be at the same place at the same time. Mifune is one of my favorite characters here. He kind of serves as a constant antagonist for these two. He's the witch Angela's bodyguard and acts as both a rival and also a mentor in some ways to Blackstar, offering him advice on how to be a better warrior and trying to break down the kid's ego. Which, is a lot of work. And in fact, by the end, he just kind of ends up making it bigger, so whoops. Mifune also has one of the coolest sets of abilities with his many swords, but he underestimates Blackstar and Tsubaki, who have the special ability to switch between multiple weapon forms. And using the Chain Scythe mode, which is the iconic Blackstar weapon in my mind, they trap Mifune and win the fight. But when confronted by Angela, who literally begs the two to not kill Mifune and then her, they end up not killing them. Blackstar says it's because killing a child is a bad look, can't relate, but there's also an empathy not so subtly hidden in the words. Their paths, as mentioned, cross many times, and every time it's a highlight. Actually, so much of a highlight that it's during one of their fights that the second opening plays for the first time. Which, if you couldn't tell from my love of JJK, I love when shows put openings in climactic fights. Death the Kid, who everyone calls Kid because his name is a mouthful, so I'll follow suit and call him Kid from now on, starts off his stint aura farming. But fear not, he's a complete doofus. Kid is the son of the Grim Reaper Death, who is the head of the academy. You meet him in episode 1 as kind of this lovable scamp character. He has a silly voice and a cute mask that you can doodle all over everything in your school, but he is the Grim Reaper canonically. Now, Kid's plot is fairly different than the others since he's a Reaper, so he gets to be more high grade than he actually gets sent on a lot of side quests throughout the series. But for now, Kid and the Thompson sisters are hunting down a witch. This one being an actual witch, and also not a moral low point if they kill her, as she's literally puppeting around the dead for her own gain, and fondles the Thompson sisters. Quick note, these two are some of the show's favorites when it comes to fan service. They constantly get put in situations like this. It's something you just gotta come to terms with watching this show. In fairness, I can at least attest that it's not the worst possible fan service ever. There's other shows for that. Fortunately though, it doesn't last all too long, and these three can be competent, even if Kid's OCD almost kills them. But on the other hand, these three also destroy an international landmark while doing the job, so as a punishment, they lose literally all of their progress. And just as a reminder, when I say all of their progress, I mean their canonically almost 200 kills get revoked because they break this pyramid. Which, I mean, makes sense. You don't want to get into the socio-political aspects of destroying a historical landmark, but it is kind of funny that they just say, actually none of that ever happened. And that brings us to the Remedial Lessons arc, where we meet the last few characters that are important to the story here, Professor Stein and Nurse Medusa. Stein is Maka's dad's old meister, who was, abusive. Yeah, these two kind of have a whole abuse arc. It's mostly played for laughs, but there's the terrifying fact that Spirit woke up to Stein trying to dissect him. So I'm sorry, I don't know how you call that anything other than abuse, especially because Spirit mentions it multiple times, so it clearly stuck with him. Stein is afflicted with something called madness, ergo trying to dissect his meister. And he also has the ability to channel his soul without a weapon partner. He becomes the kid's teacher, specifically helping the Seven perfect the technique of soul resonance, which in Smash terms is basically their final Smash ability. Why did I decide to use Smash terms? I don't know. Medusa is the school nurse, but also an evil witch. Ooh, spooky. Okay, she's actually one of the best villains from an anime that I can think of. Her power set is Vector Magic, which is just a cool power set overall. She literally changes people's direction and velocity. It's using arrows she places on the ground. And it makes for such cool fights, especially the one she has in the Battle of the School. And she also introduces Krona, who is my personal favorite character. Also my NB Awakening, but we'll touch on that later. One thing you can't exactly talk about this show without is the sheer style of it. This show has an almost Tim Burton vibe to it. Weird wonky lines, the feeling of oddity. It's very gothic by nature, but it's mixed with this distinctly early 2000s street culture aesthetic. And honestly, if you don't get what I mean, just look at Maka's classic anime schoolgirl outfit layered with this edgy, draping trench coats. Then you got things leaning more into the Y2K, like Soul's patch jacket and headband, and Blackstar's Blackstar, he looks just straight out of a Kingdom Hearts game. And then you also have the things leaning more towards the gothic style, like most of Kid's suits, Spirit's entire design, hell, even Stein's character design, giving him the classic evil doctor look with the bolt in his head and the patchwork. The streets are somewhat Victorian, with these tall, skinny buildings and the cobble streets and street lamps. And then there's the many, many scenes drawn in these cathedral-esque sets. The gothic influence makes me happy, and with Okubo's art style, it's one of those shows where you see that gothic art style front and center. You automatically know what it is, which I personally think is a large factor to its success. I've said it a lot on my streams when talking about The Wall of Vows especially, but I think an animated show's art style is a large contributor to the show succeeding. There's a reason a fair amount of people weren't all that invested in Marvel's CG animated Disney Plus shows, but CG animated shows such as Arcane and The Amazing Digital Circus do so well. And no, this isn't a set in stone rule. There are obviously plenty of shows that look fairly quote-unquote generic and still do well because the story is good, or that quote-unquote generic style is something that's appealing. But I personally always love when I can see a screenshot from a show and immediately tell where it comes from. You can do it with Attack on Titan, you can do this with Jujutsu Kaisen, you can do this with Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, and you can definitely do it for Soul Eater. Take any still frame from this show, or even the backdrops, and you can tell it's from Soul Eater. Now, that's not to say it's directly from the Okubo art style. I mean, this show is largely animated in the Studio Bones house style, but that style lends itself to Okubo's bold line work and proportions. And they recreate a fair amount of panels shot for shot, especially in the first half. And while we're talking about the show's stylistic choices, let's talk soundtrack. See, I told you all I'd write about it. Resonance by TM Revolution is the first opening of the show, and while I prefer the second personally, the first one hits so hard. It gets you pumped up with those synth stabs right at the start. It did this, synth stabs. It gets you pumped up with those synth stabs right at the start, then immediately blends it with these gothic bells and a choir. It really wouldn't work for many other animes. It's made to fit in the DNA of this show so much. The first ending is I Wanna Be by Stance Punks, straight up punk track that leads you into a false sense of security with a ballad beginning before going into straight screamo. Fun fact, this is probably the first straight up punk song I ever listened to as a kid, and yes, I still sing along. The second ending is Style by Kana Nishino. It is a pop song on the other side of things, and while I think it doesn't fit in as musically well as the other OPs and endings, them reanimating this ending for Baby Chrono will always make me partial to it and put it in one of my top tiers. Ending 3 is, and I'm so sorry because I am going to butcher this pronunciation, Bakuso Yumeta by Digimo, which is a hip-hop inspired track, which makes sense considering characters' visuals such as Soul and Blackstar. And it has some of the coolest visuals of the endings, with these awesome roll call shots of the Meisters that are so iconic. But I really want to talk about Opening 2, Paper Moon, by Tobin Heavenly 6. That's not a gamer tag, that's the pseudonym for idol Tomoko Kawase, where she makes some banger fucking music. Now, something about me, I'm a bit of an idol fan, so I love this type of song. It's got such a simple guitar riff that will just infect your ears, and given Soul's entire arc that we'll talk about, from the opening line of I'm falling down into my shadow, like the themes of the lyrics hit. And it's got the same electro rock, though I will acknowledge there's no gothic choir or bells, just a music box that plays the same main guitar melody sometimes. But it still fits for the show so much, and this song is my favorite, I'll fully admit, at least of the openings. And yes, it might be because of Alma's cover of it, but it's my video. But finally, there's Strength. This song is so goated, I probably contribute to like 40% of its streams. This song goes platinum in my house. It's such a solid final opening, with the chorus where you're just belting with it, the driving guitar riff. Other shows would say fuck it and make this an opening, but they use it as the ending for the final arc, which brings you into this song about not giving up after some of the most dramatic moments of the show. It's also accompanied by some of the most desolate visuals this show has to offer, which, again, seems crazy given that this is a completely gothic anime about working for the Grim Reaper. but they just have multiple main characters shown dead here. It also gives us the image of the 7 all standing their ground through it all, and I love this ending so much. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about the music now. I only went so surface level because if I don't stop myself, I will be here all day. Let me know if you'd watch a video of me just gassing up this show's anime soundtrack. This series, like most animes nowadays, is very serialized. There's not a lot of filler, even episodes that feel like they'd be filler at first, such as Excalibur's introduction, is actually, funnily enough, really important to the rest of the story. And okay, I'm ADHDing, but like, what am I not? Excalibur. I'm gonna say it, Excalibur is one of the best joke characters in all of anime, cause make no mistake, he's an absolute joke here. He wrote his own legend because he's so lonely, and in order to make people want him, he embellishes his tale. Unfortunately for him, he is dead-ass the most annoying person ever. Like, that's not a bit, that's not me disliking him, that is just straight canon. When you make an annoying character, it's imperative that you at least make them funny, because you don't want the audience to feel annoyed that when they're on screen instead of laughing when they're on screen, especially if they come back as much as Excalibur does. And he is done so well. And this might have been made funnier on my most recent watch because I have the knowledge little me in like 2013 didn't have, that Excalibur is one of the most important beings in this universe. He is one of the first weapons ever. This lore is so weird. Now, something that's not done well? The fan service. Yeah, we gotta talk about the fan service, guys. Blair the Cat kind of just exists as fan service. Like, she does have a character arc, but it's not important enough to make up for the sheer amount of boob shots she has, especially when one of her scenes in that arc only exists for us to see 2 hot, scantily clad women on the ground fighting. And the show even points this out. And most of her fan service includes harassing Soul, which, like, different time, these things weren't taken as seriously, so for better or for worse, mostly worse, but it does start to make me uncomfortable at a point that Soul, on multiple occasions, just wakes up to this grown woman, by the way, and then you get the multiple times the girls in the 7 are just groped, or Maka gets her skirt flipped, or when they made Medusa a lolly. To be fair, they didn't sexualize her, but, like, to be fair, they didn't sexualize her in the show, but, like, that still didn't stop the fandom, which, I wish I could say I was surprised, but unfortunately, being a fan of anime, it is a hell of my own creation. Look, fanservice doesn't ruin an anime. I like Assassination Classroom, Chainsaw Man, and Naruto, and they all have some crazy amounts of fanservice. But I think the way that Soul Eater handles it is not the best in my opinion, and that's just me, and that's just my criticism of Okubo's works as a whole. Man loves putting fan service in his work, and hey, if that's your thing, don't let me stop you from enjoying it, but it is a big thing that I want to point out because it's not exactly my thing, so it's possible it's not someone else's thing, and I am making this video with the express hope that you go watch this show, so I think it's only fair to warn you of some less than savory fan service you might run into. Capiche? Okay, please don't come for me in the comments. Okay, now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, let's talk about some main characters in depth. At least the ones I think stand out. Now, because this show is kind of dark and the deeper themes get into kind of heavy subject matter, here's a trigger warning for mental health, self-harm, and abuse allegories. If you aren't in the right headspace to hear about any of those, that's totally fair. Here's the timestamp for the next section. I'll give you a second to skip to that. Alright, first let's talk about Soul. Soul Eater Evans is the namesake of the show, with the logo for the show being his soul. Now, don't be mistaken, he's not the main character, he's the reason for the iconography of the show and plays a major role, but the character we truly follow the journey of is someone else. But that doesn't discount the fact that I think he's a great character. He's usually personified as this laid-back guy, but if there's something you do need to know about him, he is willing to die for Maka. And he almost proves that multiple times, having a nasty habit of throwing himself in front of lethal blows and body blocking Maka multiple times. Yeah, these two are popular in AO3 if you weren't sure. Though, to be fair, they aren't explicitly built up to be a couple. Every little bit of flirting that can be seen could also just be seen as platonic, and I think that's really cool. Don't get me wrong, I get the ship, I even ship it, but, you know, it's cool sometimes to not make it just female lead and male lead have to get together. I mean, I'm not saying this can't be done well, but I appreciate that they leave it open-ended at the end, all the same. Soul has an entire arc about Madness himself. After being injected with black blood, after being injected with black blood after his first encounter with Krona, surprise, surprise, this happened because he flung himself into one of the aforementioned lethal blows. And what black blood does is give us the visuals of Little Imp, a personification of Soul's madness, and it also gives us a look into Soul's mind, especially when he's in the weapon form. You see, Soul was actually a piano player as a kid and comes from a musical family, so his madness takes on the imagery of playing a piano, which is just always a cool way to show any mental struggles as discordant chords, coming from someone who is a musician and relates to that kind of imagery. Soul is able to overcome the madness with the help of Maka by letting her share the burden, which is a big step, since Soul's aforementioned overprotective nature makes him not really want to let her in, and he wants to defeat his own demons. But to anyone who's ever dealt with any mental health problems, that's not really realistic, or healthy. Sometimes the best course of action is letting someone you trust help you through recovery. There's also a parallel arc of this with Stein that I know everyone in the comments is dying to bring up. Rightfully so, Stein's arc is one of the best in the show, and his episode where he goes into this is one of the best episodes of the show. But Lord Death pairs him up with Marie, a Death Scythe, because she has an effect on him that actually calms him down because they care for each other. And ultimately, she's the reason that he doesn't turn on the DWMA. An arc that also has Maka in it tertiarily. Look, segues are weird, I'm trying my best. Maka Alburn is by far my second favorite character. Look, we all know who my favorite is. But Maka is truly the main character of the show, and anyone who disagrees, I posit probably never watched the show, because it's not hard to see. She's analytical and can sometimes be uptight, especially by Soul and Blackstar standards, as she often plays straight man to those two, but there's more than that to her. She's an incredibly skilled fighter, as it's mentioned multiple times that a scythe isn't exactly an easy weapon to wield, which is true in real life as well, and she's easily the one willing to try absurd plans, take risks, such as talking to the victim at the center of Medusa's plan, sharing in Soul's madness in order to use soul resonance while he's infected with it. She's really headstrong, hyper-competitive, and isn't afraid to call people out of their bullshit, mostly seen by her multiple times confronting Spirit about cheating on her mom. Yikes. But most importantly, she has the goal of being a legendary Meister, and she doesn't really care for anything that's in her way, even to the detriment of others. Yeah, our main character is simultaneously empathetic as hell, but also she can be selfish, because we call those flaws. And it makes her so much more interesting and entertaining to watch. If you look on the surface, yeah, she's just a basic shonen protag with a bookworm shtick, but I truly love the fact that she's a girl who refuses to give up a fight, whether that be after all her friends are down for the count, or whether that be an emotional battle to break down Krona's walls and bring them into the DWMA. Maka just doesn't quit. Krona Gorgon is one of my favorite characters in fiction. And I say this knowing I'm extremely biased because they were one of the characters that made me realize I was non-binary myself. And if you must know, the others include Nagisa from Assassination Classroom and Hanji from Attack on Titan. They're shown to be abused by Medusa, who experimented on them with black blood, which, they won't let you forget. But the abuse allegory goes one step further, because Krona's weapon, Ragnarok the Demon Sword, is almost like a goddamn symbiote that buried itself into Krona. Ragnarok consistently belittles and beats Krona, and you can actually see that attacking with the sword takes a physical toll on Krona. Like, look, Krona is very anxious and depressed, so sad in fact that they get Blackstar, who I can only imagine is what people who hate Naruto think Naruto is, depressed. And Ragnarok doesn't make any of it better. Now, the lore of Ragnarok is never really expanded upon in the anime, just that he fears Medusa too, something, hurt people, whatever, and that he's got like this dragon creature form. Now, Krona is a fun character to look into because their arc with Maka is about breaking out of the abusive relationship because they finally realize that someone cares for them without standards. Unconditionally. This is also where I point out that in the manga, this arc is much less of a straightforward happy ending. They go back to Medusa, betray the Academy multiple times, and then they are on the bad guy's side literally until the final moments of the final fight, where they sacrifice themselves to steal Asura again. And look, that's a great arc. I love my tragic characters, and I have a special place in my heart for manga Krona, but also, I prefer the anime ending for Krona. I know, I'm crazy. I just enjoy the message of you can be happy more than the message of you have to atone. And that's all the characters I'm going to talk about in this video, because if I talk about all the characters here, I could be here all day. If y'all want a part 2 to this that goes more in depth of all the other characters, let me know by liking the video. Anyways, the later half of the series focuses on 3 main parties, the DWMA with the 7, the Witch's Army, Arachnophobia, and the Kishin Asura. Arachnophobia is your average evil army, and honestly, past Lady Arachne being a solid replacement to Medusa, a much more careful planner with an actual army, she's kind of hand-waved in the finale, and Arachnophobia really is too, because the finale prefers to focus on Asura. And that's for good reason, because Asura is the villain that's been being built up for the entire show, and a much more dangerous antagonist. Yes, as you've guessed, yeah, we're talking about the ending now. The build-up to this is genuinely batshit. I genuinely can't do it justice in one of my little videos. There's Chainsaw Man, a poorly developed conspiracy, Lord Death turns the whole city into a fucking Eva. It's crazy. If you haven't watched it, I recommend experiencing it yourself because, ooh. Now, as beloved as the series is, it's also infamous that its finale is viewed in a different light. The ending is anime only, and I'll say it, Studio Bones' track record for anime only endings is hate it or love it. So, after the confrontation with Arachnophobia, which includes the aforementioned City Eva, Asura fights Death and beats him. First big change in the manga, Death dies here, and Kid goes into the final confrontation as a full-on Reaper. But in the anime, they keep him alive, so Kid isn't a full Reaper going into this fight. But that's basically just semantics at this point, whatever. The fight starts anyways, and to be fair, it's a really cool fight. Blackstar goes full Naruto, and Tsubaki is using her new power-up that they got from the conclusion of the arc with Mifune. And all of the 7 are going all out. Asura spends the time either monologuing about fear and how we need to let go of it, or whining like a child whenever any of the heroes get the upper hand, which is very in line for his characterization. He's a petty, whiny child. He's actually naive in a way, and I love that in a villain. But if this is it, why was I saying that this is viewed in a different light? This seems good. Maka and Soul are the only ones still standing. Kid, Liz, Patty, Blackstar, and Tsubaki are all KO'd, and Asura is goading Maka into surrender. They have a standoff, which ends with Maka using a soul resonance, Genie Hunter. It's a technique only she can use, and it works by eliminating the evil soul wavelengths. It was actually used earlier in this arc against Medusa to get rid of her without harming the kid she inhabited. And as they bring this swing down, Asura has this absolute banger line.
A move that targets evil. But let me ask you one thing. Am I truly evil?
It's such a banger line. This entire fight is a fight about ideals, and Asura truly believes in his cause. He keeps talking about how every human being has a bit of madness in them, which I think is an interesting concept. And when he goes to finish Maka off, Soul takes the blast. Again, very in character and a great moment. Like mentioned earlier, Soul has taken hits for Maka before and is protective of her, so him taking the shot is a great moment, if not expected. And Maka gets up to just straight up fist fight Asura. This amuses Asura because, well, he just beat up all her friends and now she's without a weapon even, so what is she gonna do? He really doesn't see this as a realistic threat, and in fact starts toying with her, giving her the quote-unquote option to save Soul by jumping in front of an attack, and, well, I mean, we all know how this choice goes. Look, it's a very cool reversal. Granted, I wish it wasn't 0.2 seconds after Soul just took a hit for her, but I still love it in theory, and Asura thinks that should do it. She should be dead. But then in true shonen fashion, Maka gets back up again, and this is where we get the big reveal. Maka is not just a Meister, she's also a weapon. Yep, Maka is a weapon now, and yeah, it does come out of nowhere. Look, I'm not against this idea in theory. I'm actually of the opinion that it's a really cool idea. However, the reactions to the reveal is where it gets me. First off, Asura is surprised how she can be a weapon and wield Soul. However, the Thompson sisters constantly use each other in their weapon forms fairly consistently. So, like, it's never made explicitly clear why weapons couldn't just enroll as Meisters. Like, I get that Meisters and weapons are able to use soul resonance, but I'd also like to point out that there's nothing within the canon of the anime that tells us that it has to be a weapon and a Meister team explicitly to use soul resonance. Soul resonance just depends on the soul wavelengths. If they match, they match. It doesn't matter if you're a weapon or a Meister, quote unquote. It's never really established. However, my bigger question is Spirit the only weapon to ever have a kid with his Meister? When Asura is reeling for some reason about Maka being a weapon, he says, no, she's a Meister alright, but she's also got weapon blood in her. And look, maybe I'm reading this in the worst way possible, but like, wouldn't most people? I feel like in a world where weapons and Meisters are often paired up, the DWMA requires pairs that seemingly also live together. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible for people to be platonic in that sense, but to think that no one beforehand had done this is weird to me. I don't know. And if it is what they want us to believe, how come it's never mentioned? Now, again, I know I'm reading that wrong, partially for the comedy of it, but the follow-up about why did it take this long for her weapon side to awaken? How does he know? How does he know it just awakened? Look, like I said, I like the thought of Maka being a scythe. I think it's a fun and cool idea, but the reaction feels ham-fisted and kills the hype I had it as an audience. It's like the team didn't trust that people would find this reveal cool, and that's ultimately why a fair amount of people don't enjoy it. But that being said, I don't think this is the worst part of the finale. No. The worst part is the way they take one of Maka's coolest moments in the series and decide to speak down to the audience. I love the series, but this part genuinely irked me. Not silly, haha, this is funny thing like I did with the scythe reveal just then. No, this genuinely irritates me, so welcome to the section of the video that I like to call Lev Rants for way too long. Maka is bloody and beaten. She's used Genie Hunter, it didn't work. She used her own weapon form to throw straight hands, and Asura still beat her. And he has her by the neck, goading her, telling her she has nothing left. And she says, good. Then I'll be fine. And it's such a great moment, where realizing she won't win the fight, she accepts death, accepts defeat. She shows Asura she's not afraid, and not in the mad fearlessness that he's been positing. It's bravery in the truest sense of the word, and Asura can't accept that. It's such a genuinely great moment, albeit very different in the manga. It provides a direct counter-argument to Asura's ideals. True bravery isn't rejecting fear, it's accepting it and facing it. And that's a great thesis. I love it. It's so potent and understated. So tell me why they have the rest of the 7 wake up during this to explain in the simplest terms possible? Like why undercut the power of this moment by having them explain how you should feel? It baffles me. And they got Corona as part of the speech too, god damn it! Look, I get it, the cast is ensemble, you want them included in the big finale moment, but this is undeniably a Maka moment, and all of the others talking in the scene takes away from it. I mean, Blackstar even calls Asura an idiot just for fun, I guess? none of what they're saying adds anything to this scene except for stating the obvious. I think that's why it irritates me so much. Because if the studio had just left it there, left it with Maka having her brave stand, and then what happens next, I think this finale would be much more beloved. I genuinely do. And look, I know I've not been a big fan of some shonen bullshit, but like this explains perfectly all of the problems I have with a lot of shonen anime's finales fumbling the ball because they insist on telling the audience how to feel. And this is the most potent example I've ever seen of it. But whatever, rant over. The series ends with Maka bravely punching Asura into a billion pieces, and we get an admittedly incredibly sweet and very shonen outro montage. So, overall, how do I feel about the series? Well, I don't hate it. Despite my slights against it with the poor handling of fan service in the finale, I can't bring myself to hate it. It's such a cool series purely from an aesthetic standpoint, with so many fun characters. And Studio Bones is one of my favorite animation studios, and this is some of their best animation work. The fight scenes are so incredible and impactful. They capture the vibes of the manga so well, with some sequences taken straight out of the manga. I also don't mind all the liberties this show takes changing from the manga, because for the most part they don't make it inherently worse. And yeah, nostalgia does play a big part in this. I'd be stupid to not acknowledge that I wouldn't find this show as enjoyable today if I didn't find it first when I was 9. But I think that's okay. I have many other shows I'm nostalgic for that I look back at and cringe because I can't believe I liked them. So being able to look at this and still enjoy it, even though I can acknowledge its shortcomings, has to mean something, right? Like, even knowing I'm pre-invested in these characters, the fact that they still mean so much to me. It's a sign to me, at least, that this show is still good, even if I don't find Blair as funny as I used to when I was 9. It's, yeah, crazy, I know. I watched this show when I was 9 first, along with Attack on Titan. And all of a sudden, my entire vibe is starting to explain itself. Look, if you are just looking for a shonen that's easy to watch, with a cool art style, and some great characters, I think you should check Soul Eater out. And maybe skip the ending if shonen speeches get on your nerves like they do mine, because it's genuinely tons of fun. And even just editing this video, I already want to go back and watch it again. But what did you think? I would love to know what you thought about the show. I always love hearing about what other people think about the shows I cover. Was there something I didn't mention? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. This fucker turned out to be long as hell, but I love making this video, so if you made it all the way to this part, that just tells me I'm doing something right. And also, thanks for all the love and support on the Dragon Striker video. It is rapidly approaching 1,000 views, and now I'm scared because that means I'm going to have to watch Haikyuu, and I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. As always, if you want to support me, you can always like this video, subscribe, share with your friends. If you want to support me on my other platforms like Twitch and Twitter, you can find those links down below. You guys are awesome. That's all I wrote. Be good people.